Hello, my name is Marcin, and today I'm gonna make a review from the Iglo 22nd season game from the Group J, round 4, where Boriss playing as black and zabry playing as white have met. And the game has eventually ended with a significant victory of black, who managed to create a large moyo while also killing some of white stones. So it's worth saying what was the reason, what was the origin of such an outcome. Let us begin from the Fuseki, which looks kinda decent. There is nothing extraordinary. Josekis are as for now played without significant mistakes. Already now we can see the initial formation of the potential moyo from black side, who managed to build two walls facing each other with an additional supporting stone at Q10. So here we already have a nice base, a promising base to create something like a wider zone of influence for the right part of the board, while white stones are very deeply connected to the territorial part of the Goban. They are controlling already three out of four corners, and the fourth corner is already also likely to be controlled by white, at least to some extent. But on the other side, this potential moyo looks probably a little bit frightening from the white's perspective, so that's the reason why he chose to start a fierce fight with such a deep invasion into this potential, because it is not finished yet, into this potential black moyo. What are the alternatives, one could ask? I would probably firstly consider moves like this or even this, because if you look at the lower right corner from white's perspective, these stones are settled very very lowly. So this is like we have two stones on the first line and even one more stone on the second line, which is a very low position, which for me personally, it demands very very loudly to be extended somewhere into this direction. So both of these moves are probably acceptable, especially this one, which doesn't bear a risk of being cut, or at least black will not try such a continuation if white plays a strong connection. Right now, with such a keima, such a continuation is pretty possible in some moments. Obviously, we don't really know how it could eventually develop, but nevertheless, such a variation looks just safer. From other moves, one can also consider just a calm extension from the lower left corner, which is not open yet. So if white plays down like this, he can also prepare himself to create some counter zone of influence from the left side. So basically, if black gets this, white could probably get something like this, and the game would be still more or less even, and white wouldn't be immediately forced to invade the black zone of influence in such a risky way. And moreover, if white needs to invade black so badly, he can also choose one of these variants, which would still maintain some connection with this open part of the board. It means if white plays his stone somewhere over 10th or 11th line, he could still extend himself rather easily in one of these three directions, while avoiding a possibility to being cut, as it eventually happened with this invasion, which from the very beginning, which has very little place for himself to develop in any direction, as this corridor looks pretty narrow and settling near the near these first lines of the board. It looks like white cannot create enough space for himself, so white is essentially forced to run towards the center part of the board, but this attempt of escapement, it doesn't look successful as for now, as black managed to create either even another large wall, which is a good potential base to create another moyo on the lower right quarter of the board, while white still cannot be sure if this group survives. So white needs desperately to create some eye shape in this limited space, but it doesn't look like moves as this can enable him to create these eyes. All right, this is also an important moment of the game, as white apparently chose to sacrifice his corner in order to improve his central position, as naturally white should add this one more stone in order to ensure that this group remains alive. Without this stone, black can easily kill the whole group with moves like this. But instead of securing himself, white still continues to push the weaknesses of black's shape in order to create some hole through which white could eventually run towards the empty space of the board. Actually, this whole effort should go in vain, as black still can just play like this, and it looks like after such a combination, white still has only one eye and black has center, which can be used to play perhaps like this and leave white with insufficient space to create a second eye in this part of the board. So there's a strong chance that after playing this Atari, white would still remain locally dead, and the game would be much easier from black perspective, but nevertheless black still is able to maintain the connection between all of his stones. Perhaps right now it would be a little bit better to play like this, as white is totally cut right now from the outer groups, and he has no other possibility but to create 2i space for this group, which would be particularly hard right now. Eventually, it appears that white and black agreed to sacrifice this group in order to create a probably safe group from the white's perspective, although I'm not totally convinced if black cannot place somewhere over here and trying to locally kill this white group. As we know, this invasion never happened and white actually managed to survive in this part of the board, but it doesn't change the fact that black, after killing the corner, already wins for probably 20 points. And furthermore, he also has several center moves, which after these exchanges leave him not only with the captured corner, but also with a very good shape in the lower right part of the board, which is very likely to turn out into the moyo. The white's essential problem is that he plays very responsibly from this moment, being unable to retake the initiative and change the game outcome into his advantage. So probably white should try to seek for some remaining weaknesses in black shape, because who knows, perhaps this cut would work in some moment, and after several exchanges, perhaps black would be forced to sacrifice at least several points, for example in this part of the board, in exchange for finishing the process of killing of this white group. We don't know, but still playing such moves in center is actually always advantageous for white. So it's pretty shameful that white didn't try to continue this sequence. Right now, white only focuses himself on creating a space around the corner, which is probably not enough to balance the gains which black has created here and here, especially that black still extends his zone of influence without any special resistance, as white's moves are always only a response, only an answer to the black center moves, as he still essentially can play whatever he wants. So instead of some attempt of fighting like here, or perhaps even some cut over here, or some invasion from this side, white essentially plays what black expects him to do. Even now, we can either create a zone of influence for ourselves like here, or still we can consider some cuts here, perhaps some approachment from this side. I don't really know, but in any case, black just surrounds his shape even more. What is also important to underline is that these moves doesn't really create any stale territory from white's perspective, as black still can quite easily invade this potential white zone of influence, which actually happens with moves like this. Obviously, white surrounds some territory on the fourth line, which is basically advantages from his side, but still black doesn't lose anything and he only gains even more points. So right now his moyo looks to be really huge. It's probably something like 100 points, and if we add this gain to his into his treasure, it looks like white is unable to change the fate of this game, especially if white is unable to kill the corner invasion from black side. Perhaps one could consider attachment from the Sansan side, as black cannot directly connect this stone with his strong group. So probably he would be forced to sacrifice at least some part of his group, and with continuation like this, black survives with everything. Perhaps right now it would be a little bit harder to survive, but still white chooses such variations which are ensuring the safe life for black. So he already created two eyes. The potential moyo from white, which even earlier seemed smaller than the black's one, became even smaller. So right now we can hardly see any chance for white to change the outcome of the game. Nevertheless, he tries to invade through one of the last remaining or open roads into the moyo, but still he is unable to deal with his own weaknesses in shape, which eventually finishes with the cut on the J line and even another gain from the black's perspective. Here black should have probably played somewhere over here, as right now it looks like black can either play like this or just like this. In any case, it would be probably a little bit more advantageous from the black's perspective, but still, even if white survives over here, it doesn't look bad from the black side, as still he manages to destroy this potential influence on the white's left side. So eventually it looks like not only white has lost several of his stones, but also he didn't manage to create any wider territory if any part of the board, as this corner and this limited gain are his only stable territory zones, together with the right lower corner, while black's territory is way more extended. Well, fortunately, White managed to connect himself on the first line, but still Black is able to maintain most of his territory. Here, White eventually confirms the safety of his central group. But still, it looks like, well, first of all, it looks like White made some technical mistake, which resulted in an even bigger loss from his side. Instead of playing on k1, he should have just simply connected here. But even despite this loss, White seems unable to propose any strategy of creating any attempt, any chance to win, to destroy the advantage of the Black, while he only further confirms his lead. We can also see that after playing the move on the L17, Black has technically finished all the damage, all the potential risks of White invading into this part of the board and cutting some of his stones. After this whole exchanges, the remaining attempt of White at p16 is significantly delayed, and Black has simply too much liberties in order to be killed. While White have 5 liberties, Black has much more. Probably he doesn't even need to play over here. He would have killed the stones in any case, but still Black just plays everything which is required to confirm his win. So eventually the game finishes after nearly 200 moves with White's resign, as he proved himself unable to either destroy Black's Moyo or to resurrect his dead stones. So we can clearly see that the decisive moment of this game appeared very quickly, as it probably was the deep invasion into the Black stone of influence, which shaped the whole course of game and caused the continuous discomfort from White's side, who was continuously forced to fight in a state near to death. So he actually never was totally sure if he's dominating, if his most important groups are fully alive or not. He still was forced to make hard choices, either to sacrifice his stones or playing on or playing between life and death. So most probably he should have just waited with such a risky invasion until he creates more advantageous position to invade with some additional stones, like either here or here or here, which would greatly support him in any attempt of of invasion or creating the moyo of his own. Black actually wasn't even forced to play any risky moves, as he simply answered the white invasion, and he did it just in a proper way, thus building, creating a stable and comfortable position, which he just had to maintain until the end of the game. Despite few minor mistakes like playing here instead of here, and some minor miscounts in the fight on the left central part of the board, like in this group, Black essentially didn't make any special mistake, which eventually gave him a safe victory. So from my side, that's all for now. I recommend to analyze the Fuseki situations more, and with particular attention to moments like this. Whether do we really need to invade Moyo so deeply? Because I personally, I'm also not a fan of such a deep invasion, because I know really well how hard is it to create a satisfying result from such a deep invasion, which doesn't have any external support. Sometimes it is just better to create our own strength, because we can simply provoke our opponent to invade, which can often change the course of the game into such one which is more beneficial for us. So if Black would just play something like this, it would be most probably the white who is more promising in terms of creating a moyo right now, and the game would be looking totally differently. So thank you for your attention. Please don't hesitate to ask me if you have any doubts. Thank you and goodbye.